Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Shlissel Challah event. I'm delighted that so many of you have joined us from across the UK, from Europe, from Israel, and really heartfelt welcome. First of all, I really want to thank Allegra Chalamami, who will be the star of today's show. Allegra has been a very long time supporter for Chai, and we're really grateful to you for all your fantastic interest and wanting to help Chai in whichever way you can, and eagerly looking forward to the Shlissel Challah that you're going to show us today. So the Shlissel Challah event, what is it and what is Shlissel Challah? Well, as many things in Judaism, there are lots of reasons for why we do things. But the main reason, so its name, Shlissel, is taken from the Yiddish word key, from the German word Schlüssel. And the main reason why we do it the first Shabbat after Pesach is that it commemorates when the Jewish people entered the land of Israel after 40 years of being in the desert, where manna fell every single day. It was a miracle. And when they entered the land of Israel, we were commanded and instructed to sow seeds, to plant seeds, to till the land, to work the land, and to produce food for our livelihoods. And the key represents God's blessings, that we ask him to open the key for us, that we should have be able to sustain ourselves in every single way. And when we bake Shlissel Challah, or when we bake any kind of challah, it's also a time and opportunity for us to ask for any blessings for ourselves, for our loved ones. And it's a very special, auspicious time, one of the 3 special mitzvot that we have as women, which is when we light the candles, Shabbat candles, when we go to mikveh, and when we take challah. But I have to add that men can also partake in this bracha very much so. So we started doing this Shlissel Challah at Chai a few years ago. We're relatively newbies at this. And the way we did it at Chai, because we were too nervous, none of us were that proficient to make the intricate shape of a key. What we have done in the past, is to take the front door key. We took the front door key of Chai, and also our own front door keys, or any off keys, or any keys that we want, wash them very well, put them in bakewell paper, wrap them in bakewell paper, and then in tin foil, and just put it into the braided challah that we make. And some of us also made braided challahs and took them around to friends, to neighbors. And it's just a lovely gesture. Who doesn't enjoy getting a challah, freshly baked challah? And I just reminded about the Shlissel Challah. Some people actually asked us, is it anything to do with Shlissel? You know, the wonderful Israeli program that's from the 3rd season. It's not connected, but no doubt they make Shlissel Challah in Jerusalem, where the series takes place. When we make challah, and it's something that maybe isn't quite so well known, is when we talk about challah, we just think of the plaited challah doughs or loaves, or the round challahs that we get in Rosh Hashanah. But actually the word challah, and the whole point of the mitzvah, of the commandment, is to separate a portion of the challah. And that is that we take the best and we take a small portion off. And that was traditionally, in the time of the temple, dedicated, and we gave it to the priests who were busy looking after the temple and didn't have time to earn a livelihood. So we, in our way, were giving to them. And the tradition still stands. It's the main reason we still do. It's very important to take that portion of bread before we start to braid the dough. We can make a bracha, a blessing, if we have over 1.67 kilos, which is 3 pounds, 10.5 ounces. If you use that amount of flour, you can make a bracha on the dough. If you have less than that, we have to still take a small piece off. Again, difference of opinions. Some communities, they take that piece of dough, that little piece that we take off, and they double wrap it in tin foil. Some people burn it. Some have another custom to put it away. So whatever is your custom. But the most important thing is to take a piece off, however much flour you have made the dough with. I will make the bracha for everybody in case some of you don't have the full amount. And for those of you who, so please say the bracha, please say the bracha with me if you have the full amount, which is over 3 pounds, 10.5 ounces, or 1.67 kilo. And for those of you who don't have that amount, please say Amen after the bracha, and you are definitely will be part of this wonderful mitzvah, this wonderful commandment. It's also a time, as I said, when we, very similar to when we light the Shabbat candles, an auspicious time just for a moment to think of why we're doing this, to ask for a special blessing for whatever we are needing for ourselves, for our families, where it's health, livelihood, children, matches for our children, whatever it may be. It's a very auspicious time to have a prayer and have in mind. So now I'm going to make the bracha. Here's something I made earlier. I've always wanted to do something like this, like on blue pita, which ages me, no doubt. Here's a dough, lovely Allegra's recipe. Wash my hands again. And ready to make the bracha. And the bracha is actually called, the whole mitzvah is called to separate challah. So we're now separating a portion. Here we go. There's the dough. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahafrish challah. Harei zeh challah. And we proclaim it. We actually make a name and we give it a status. Okay, that's me done. So now I'm going to hand over to Allegra. If you can see, there's a comment box. So please, if you have any comments, if you want anything to go slower, if you want another explanation or to go back, whatever it is, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So please feel free to write, and we'll feed the chats and the comments into Allegra. And over to you, Allegra. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Are we okay, ladies and gentlemen?
A little bit of an echo. A little bit of an echo.
Let's try that. I'm not sure why it's that's better.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Louise. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Chai, and thank you all for joining today for this Shlissel Challah bake. It really is a pleasure to be here supporting Chai and coming to you live in your living rooms or kitchens, wherever you are. Shlissel Challah is a very special time of the year, especially for Challah Mami. It's a little bit like Christmas, or the exciting week of the year for the Jewish equivalent, because it's a time when lots of people who maybe don't usually bake challah decide to have a go, and it's a time when we can really celebrate and elevate our traditional challah, and especially for me, have a go with challah designs, because that's something that I'm all about. I'm all about taking the traditional challah and shaping it and designing it and plaiting it and making it something extra specially beautiful. So that's what we're going to do today. I hope you've all got your challah dough ready. I hope those of you who had a go with my recipe have enjoyed it. Please do join in the chats and comments. Tell us where you're watching. If you're around the UK or the world, in the comment box, we'd love to hear where you're joining in today. And as Louise said, if you have any questions as we go, please don't hesitate to pop them in the chat box. You can always watch this back live because it is being recorded. So if there's anything you're not sure of, you can certainly go back and watch it again. So without further ado, I'm going to grab my challah as well. Louise's looked incredible, very light and puffy, I must say, when you gave it a good knock. Here's mine, ready from this morning. It's been rising now for about an hour and a half, so that it's doubled in size, and we're ready to go. I'm going to give it a good punch down, which is often my favorite bit. Get rid of your aggressions from the week. Give it a good punch, get the air out, so that it's ready to go. Lovely feeling when it's get ready to design. Publishing a technique which is excellent for making keys once a year for Shlissel Week, but it's also a really great technique for making celebration challas of other kinds. If you want to make a number challah for somebody's birthday or a 13 for a mitzvah, if you want to make a letter challah because you're celebrating somebody for love, or 2 letters for people who've got engaged, or a heart-shaped challah, and if you've got a wedding, something like that, this technique will work really well then. So as I think you've all been told in advance, if you've got a rolling pin handy, that will really help. And here we go. So if you grab your rolling pin, I've got a wonder roller here, but a normal rolling pin will do just fine. And it's an unusual tool to use for challah. It's usually something we see with pastry. It's not something you might have used before with challah, but it works really, really well, especially for the design we're going to do today. So we're going to...
I was a bit worried when I saw a rolling pin. I was always so worried my dough would collapse and I wouldn't roll it. So that's learned something, certainly.
You're right. People often say to me, a rolling pin, were you crazy? What are we going to do with it? But just trust me. So we're going to roll out our challah dough, thin and flat. It doesn't matter the shape. Some of my designs will have to be a circle or a rectangle. This one we're going to try a bit more rectangular, but just long and thin. And you'll find that the dough might give a little bit of resistance, but don't worry, that's normal. If you just keep on pushing it, keep gently persuading it. Sometimes it pings back a little bit. Don't worry, it will do as you're told. Some people might need to put a little bit of flour on your work surface in case your dough is getting sticky. If your dough is quite sticky, it might be fine with that, but we're just going to roll our dough out, thin and flat, so that we can use and shape it. The rolling pin will be our friend. And the rolling pin means we get a very, very similar texture, width and height to the dough. If you try and do this using your hands, if you try and sort of sausage out a dough like that, it is quite uneasy. You get big bits and small bits. This way you get a kind of uniform shape for your dough, which can be really nice for Shlissel. So we're just going to roll it out in and flat. Don't worry too much about the shape. It's also good for a workout of the arms. Just give it a good push. It might ping back, but don't worry. Just keep pushing it, gently persuading it, and it will do what you want. Here we go. Rolling it out. So mine's covering the whole of my surface. Not too thin. We don't want it to break and sort of pull apart, but without ripping it. Just roll it out nice and thin of that. You might get some little air bubbles popping up, but if it's a nice puffy dough.
Have you got how many sort of inches or would you say like
a coin, maybe a sort of a £1 coin. So nice and thin, but if it starts to rip or you can see it tearing, then that's probably telling you to stop. Some edges might be a bit bigger than others, but just so we've got a nice, I've got essentially a big, it looks a little bit like a pasta dough, just or a big load of pastry before you shake it. Just a big, rolled out, flat surface of dough.
Yeah, done.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a cutter and we're going to cut long, thin strips of dough in groups of 3, because that's what we're going to use for traditional plaiting today. Now, you can use, if you've got one, a pizza cutter. They're very good because they make quite an even cut through. Obviously, be careful with milk and meat. I've got a special one that I always use for my power of colours, but if you're not sure about your pizza cutter, then maybe don't use that. Otherwise, just a normal sharp knife that will do. It has to be quite sharp so that it cuts right through the dough, but we're going to cut all the way down the middle. So if I've got my big rolled out thing here, long, thin strips of dough, a couple of inches apart. So we're going to cut here's one, all the way down. And they're going to be long. They're going to be longer than you would have used before when it comes to challah. But this is the way that we get a nice, long, thin, uniform braid of challah. So I've just done 3. I'm going to do 6 while we're here, 6 strips, and then we can plait them up. So I'm doing 4. If you haven't got a pizza cutter, just a normal kitchen knife will be fine. Roll them out. As I said, the pizza cutter is good because it gives quite an even distribution, but do not worry if you're just using your knife. Then I'm going to move the rest of my challah dough to the side. Quite difficult to move it because it's so long and rolled out, but don't worry, we may use it later. So I'm just going to give myself a bit of space, moving my other long thin pasta type challah dough to the side. And then I'm going to take my long thin strips of dough. I've cut 6 so that I'm going to end up with 2 plats. But let's take 3 here. Give myself a bit of space between the 3. 3 strips of dough. You can see the sort of width we're talking about. They're very long, and that's the advantage of this technique. And I'm just going to join the ends of 3 of them together. So I usually take one and then pop one behind it, and then pop the other one behind that, and give it a squeeze. So we're joining the ends of 3 of our long thin strips together. Squeeze them together. Sometimes I do a little triangular point.
Oh, that's good. Mine always separate.
Exactly, so that they don't come apart. So we're ending up with our long thin strips. We've got 3 strips of dough, and we've just squeezed them together at the top so that they hold. And now we're going to put that down, and we're going to braid it up, just like we would be doing a normal plait in the hair. So left in the middle, right in the middle, left in the middle, right in the middle. And of course, you can do this technique with any other kinds of dough, with a 4-strand or 5-strand, as many strands as you like. But for today, we're going to do 3. Now, it's a little bit fiddly at first because the strands are so long. And as you pick them up, they get longer. But just bear with it. You'll quite enjoy it. It can be quite satisfying once you get the rhythm going. So we're going to start with our very, very long. I'm going to start with my one on the left, backwards because you're watching me through the video. Pop it down in the middle. Try not to get them tangled up. If you feel them sticking together too much or sticking to each other, then just sprinkle a little bit of flour over the top so that they don't stick together. So we'll go left in the middle, and then right in the middle, left in the middle, and we're just going to do a normal traditional plait. Be careful with the ends so that they don't muddle up. If you feel it's getting too long and you just can't handle the length, just cut them a little bit off so that it's not too difficult. But have a go at braiding these long, thin strips of challah together all the way down. It looks like I'm making spaghetti here, but it's actually a great way to make a long, thin, uniform braid of challah. As I said, if the ends are getting too much for you, you can just trim them and not have them as long, and then you could make it into another one, for example. But just do what you can manage.
Allegra, I think I fell at the first hurdle. I didn't make them long enough. So what I'm doing is I'm stretching up what I've got. I'm just stretching it out.
If you didn't make them long enough, maybe try and roll them out again, because the rolling is the thing that makes them a good shape. If you're trying to do it with your hands in a sausage way, it can often get quite uneven. So I rolled mine to the maximum that it would go before it started to fall.
Okay.
And they're very long. I sort of bunch them up the ends a bit like that, and then I can always untangle them later as we go. So we'll just braid it. Nice rhythm to it. Left in the middle, right in the middle. Once we've finished, we get a lovely long, thin challah braid, which is brilliant for wrapping and rolling and shaping in the way that we like. And it's much easier to do it by rolling it out, cutting it, and braiding it than by trying to make it using your hands, because it's hard to get very small, thin strips of challah dough otherwise, I find. So we're just going to try not to pull them too tight. We don't want them to fall apart. We're just going to use normal braiding very gently to get a lovely, long, thin strip of challah. And you'll see as your long plait emerges, how easy it will be to shape it into whatever you like. And today, of course, we're making the key, but you can use this technique for any kind of challah that you want. This is the way to make challah into the shape of your choice. For anything, for letters, for numbers, for symbols, hearts, stars, anything you like. It's a nice way for challah design because it still incorporates the plait. And I always like to try and have some kind of plaited loaf in my challah designs, because that's the homage to the original tradition of plaiting the challah. You could just take a thin normal strip and shape it and twirl it, but is it really challah if it's not plaited? I don't know. I always like to try and have some plaiting if possible. So I'm now coming to the end of my extremely long, incredible braid, which is here very, very, very long. I'm coming to the end. You can always sort of, if you're running out of worktop space, which I am, I'm coming to the end of my bench. I'm just going to snake up my plait a little bit, just to give me a bit more space. And then I'm just going to come to the end of my first plait. And as I said, it's a little bit fiddly at first when you're not used to using such long braids. To get the hang of it, it's actually really good fun. And at any point, if you have enough, or they're getting too long, or they're getting too difficult to use, you can just chop them off and start again. So just use whichever length you feel is easy enough to use in your hand. So I'm going to chop mine off at this point. I've got a little bit left on the end, which I'm going to use. I can use later or use again. And if I just show you, quite delicate, they're very delicate, but this is the length, this is how long my braid is. It's a lovely, long, thin, even braid of colour.
I won't show you mine.
So just to recap what we've done to get to this very long, thin braid point, we've taken our challah dough and we've rolled it out thin and flat using a rolling pin on the surface. We've put a bit of extra flour if it's too sticky, rolled it out thin and flat into some sort of a kind of rectangle shape, and then we've cut it into very long, as long as it will go, thin strips of challah dough. And then we use 3 at a time. And we've had a question in saying, do we do the same with each 3? Yes, you do. And for my design, I'm going to try and aim to do 2 long, thin braids now, but as many braids as you like. Yeah, we're just going to braid up the strips 3 at a time into long, thin strips. So here I go with my second knot. I'm taking the 3 strips of dough. I'm going to pinch them together at the top so that they don't have. I like a pinch, a fold, and a squeeze. That's the greatest way to join in my view. A pinch, a fold, and a squeeze, so that they're nicely joined at the end, so the ends look pretty. And then I'm going to just braid those up again using these very, very long, thin strips of dough. If they're getting too long, you can always trim the ends off to make it easier to handle. So you should be starting to have these lovely, long, thin strips of challah dough. It's quite a satisfying feeling when you manage to do them. And you can use this technique, you can make the strips as thin or thick as you like. You might find that these strips today that we're using are too thin and they won't be suitable for another design. You can always do the same, roll out with a rolling pin and then cut the strands a bit thicker if you like. You can cut them into really big chunky strips and then use those to braid up. It's just a great way of making sure the braids are uniform in size and in shape, so you can make them more thick. Delicate colour. So I'm using these very thin plaits to show you, but you can use them however you like. So we're just.
No, this is much better. My second one, Allegra.
Good. So we're just going in the middle, right all the way down to make these lovely long. There we go. So I'm coming to the end of my second one, and you can see that once they're a little bit shorter and easier to handle, you can almost sort of flip them and do a speed plait. So we're going to go left, right. And if they twist over a little bit, it can be pretty. It doesn't matter, but we're just going to a bit speedy now. There we go. Right, left, right. A bit of a sport session going here with my flip braid. A good pinch and a squeeze at the end as well to finish them off. So now I've got 2 very long, even longer than this, long strips of challah dough. They're plaited, they're thin, and they'll be very easy to shape into something pretty. So I'll just pop those down for now. And we've got a little visitor who's just come in to inspect my holidays. What do you think? Hi. So, how's everybody doing? Are we ready to start shaping the braids into the key?
Yep, all with you.
So a question about the dough in my ring. Very good question. So when I'm making the dough from scratch, I always take my rings off, which is at my own peril, as I'm always afraid to lose them. But when I'm doing the shaping, usually we're fine. The actual making of the dough, definitely not. The rings for that. But for this one we're usually okay. So what I'm going to do, I would advise you before shaping your Shlissel challah to start the shaping onto the tray or the baking paper you're going to use and actually bake it, because it will be quite delicate and you don't want to shape a beautiful key and then have to move it onto the oven tray and then break it. So if you get the tray you're going to be baking on, or your piece of baking paper, if you set that up now first so that you don't have to move it. You might have to take it out of the oven, or if you've got it ready, put your parchment paper. Even just doing it on the paper is a bit risky when it comes to flipping it onto the tray. So if you can assemble your key directly on the tray you're going to bake with, that's much easier, and make sure you don't lose the loveliness of your design. So so please try and assemble straight onto the paper. Now what we're going to do first is we're going to make the kind of the long thin body of the key. And you can really use your creative sides here, because we've got our lovely base plaits to work with. And what we're going to do is use the plaits that we've made to make the middle part of the key that goes down the center. Now, you can make your key middle as long and thick or thin as you like. Remember, we can't make it too big that it won't fit in the oven. And the key, proportionally, if you think about it, it's got to have quite a long bit in the middle, and then a short little bit at the end, and then the elaborate bit on the top. So try and bear that in mind when you're making your proportions. Leave enough space to do the nice pretty bit at the top and the little bit at the end that goes in the lock. And I'm going to use one of my plaits, and I'm going to sort of double or even triple it up, because my plait's very, very long, too long for the middle of the key. But if I lay it down in the middle of my paper, and then I can lay it back on itself so that it's sort of doubled up or even tripled up to make the middle part of the key. So I'm going to wind it back round on itself. I think I can make mine triple. I'm going to start it right at the bottom nearest me so that I don't run out of space for my other key, for the part of the elaborate part at the top. I'm going to take my long, thin, pretty strand of dough, and I'm going to wind it around my long one using just one plait, bit three times with a little bit left over at the end, which we can use for the key part. So we should make the long, thin part of the key. I lift my mouth like that. So I'm using the long, thin part of the key, but I've used one plait. I've just wound it round 3 times. It's a little bit more width than the width of the braid, but it's a middle made up from 3 smaller braids. Depending on how many plaits you've got, you might only make 2, you might only make 1 layer, you might choose to add on another part and make it even thicker if you like, but I'm using just 3 of my braids wrapped around like that. I wrapped it like an S and then stuck it together. If you don't want to do that, you can always just chop the braid into pieces and then lie them up together. So we've got 3 long, thin braids, and it gives it length, and it also is very pretty because of the actual plaiting that you've done. It will be quite delicate plaiting because of the thinness of the braids itself. So now we're going to move on to the elaborate part of the key once you've got the center part. And I've got just under half of my paper left to be able to do the elaborate part of the key. So we've got enough to do that part. Now for the elaborate part of the key, you've got some options. One thing that's very nice to do for the Shlissel, I'm not going to do it today in the design that I show you, but if you want to do it at home, please feel free to join in, is you can bake into your Shlissel challah 3 little round oven-proof dishes, little small ones, like a kind of little crudité pot, that sort of size. And you can bake those into your challah by winding your key around them. And that way, when you serve your Shlissel challah, you can put maybe 3 different little dips into the challah to make a lovely, in different colors, a lovely green pesto, a lovely sun-dried tomato dip, and then maybe an aubergine. 3 different color dips that you can put in. By doing that, if you want to do something like that, you just take your 3 little oven-proof pots, and then you pop them directly onto the tray, usually 2 and then 1 in the middle. And then when we do the winding of the shape, you would just wind your other long plait all around your little pot. So if you've got oven-proof pots and you fancy baking those in, then you're just going to put them onto your baking paper now and wind your key round. And there is an example of how that looks on my Instagram. It was featured in the Jewish Chronicle a couple of years ago, so you can see how to do that if you want to do that. Otherwise, we're just going to get super creative with our other long, thin braid. Sometimes it's helpful to actually have a key next to you. If you take out your bunch of keys, if you've got a particularly elaborate key on so that you can and this is a very good point if you want to start hiding your Shlissel, your actual inside your challah. What you can do at this point is you can either tuck it in underneath the middle part, just as the section meets the windy wave at the top. Or once you've done your wavy bit, you can just tuck it in the side, because this is quite a thin, delicate challah. But if you're baking your key in, now's a good time. You can just pop it under here before we add it on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our other very long, thin braid. We're going to attach it to the top, to the middle part. We'll attach it to the top. So where our long, thin part ends, we're going to attach the top of it. Just put the end of your braid onto the top and just give it a little press down so that it attaches. And then we're going to wind our long, thin braid round into a sort of elaborate key shape. And it's quite like doing one that's got 3 sort of bumps on it, a little bit like a clover, like a 3-leaf clover. But you can shape it however you like. If you want to keep it into just a very simple semicircle where it just goes ooh, like that and joins back on, you can do that. If you want to make it into something a little bit more elaborate where it kind of goes in and out, in and out, and in and out, you can. But just the long thin braid lets you really get your creative juices flowing and shape it however you like, however the key to resemble like your own keys that's special to you. You might like to just make it a little bit more elaborate, a little bit fancy, however you feel you would like it to look. This is the time for you to kind of get creative. So I'm going to use 3 little bumps, sort of 2 on the side, and then bring it back round, bring up my braid back round to the middle and squeeze it. I'll hold it up in a second so that you can see. It's starting to take place at the top of the key. If I just turn it round, you can see how it starts in a 3 sort of shape. So it comes out on each side, and then it comes out at the top and joins onto the middle of the design. But if you don't want to do the 3 sections, you just want to do one big semicircle at the top that comes back around, you absolutely can. And this will give you the outline of our Shlissel challah shape. I've also made sure that it fits on the baking tray, which is good, so it's not going to get stuck in the oven. So that's going to be the outline for the top wavy part of our key. And then now what you can do, I don't usually do another braid and start using to fill in the wavy part of the key with another braid. But if you want to, you can. If you want to, you like the braiding, you want to continue with the plaiting, you can just roll another 3 strips and plait them up. Or what I quite like to do is just use little extra bits of colour. I've got a few very thin strands left over from the ends of my challah, or you can just take another piece off from your dough and pull it out. But we're going to just add in to our top section some little curvy, wavy details. If you think about how a key usually looks at the top, it has little parts that sort of bend over in a little loop. It has little iron bars that connect the pieces up, and we're just going to have a little bit of fun. It's a bit like Play-Doh, but for grown-ups. You can use the challah dough as a really lovely sensory piece to enjoy. And we're just going to decorate the key however you like. We're going to fill in the pieces. So I'm going to just use little swirls and little embellishments to make the middle part of our key look nice. We're filling in the top bit now using little strips. I like to use a thicker strip to go kind of down the middle to connect. I'll show you, I'll pick it up in a second. And then I like to use wavier parts just to make swirls. And there is a finished picture of what this design looks like up on my Instagram at the moment. It's like a little bit of inspiration. One, so you can see what we're aiming for. It's up on my Instagram page at the moment, on my Facebook page at Allegra Bracha, if you want to get a head start on what it's going to look like. But it's got a point in the middle, so I'll just show you where I'm up to so far. So I've now added 2 little bits of swirls like that to join the pieces together at the top of the key. They're not plaits, they're just strips of challah dough that I've shaped. And then I'm just using little thin pieces of dough and just swirling them around, adding really pretty little embellishments onto the top of the key. If you think about a really old-fashioned kind of iron key somebody used to carry around and used to open an iron gate, you can get those kind of ideas. But really let your creative juices flow. And I know that Kai always has friends of Kai, very creative, very artistic, really gifted in the kitchen. So enjoy. I'm swirling my little pieces around. You can make the long thin strips, you can twirl them up on themselves a little bit like a snail, if you like. Making some thin strips. And just use them to shape the key. Now let's talk about, while we're finishing off our top part, let's talk about a couple of things. Number one, when we're baking our Shlissel challahs, sometimes, as you know, especially after the next rise, the challah dough can puff up. And if we've left any spaces, like we've done in the top of the key, sometimes the dough can sort of puff into it and join in the middle. So if you don't want that to happen because you've got a very delicate embellished key at the top, the best thing to do is to put either some baking paper, but I find silver foil works better. Bunch up little bits of foil and place it on the actual design anywhere that you don't want to join together in the second rise and in the base. So if you're not wanting it to puff up and join in the middle, put some silver foil in while it's baking, and then it won't be able to bake and touch in the middle. Very carefully and you don't get to see the lovely shaping. So the key, you really want to see the bottom. You want to be able to see that it's not all wound together. So I'm just adding a couple more embellishments into the top of the key. When you're happy with the way that the top of the key is working, embellishments, feel free to use any braid that you've got left. I've got a little bit left from the bottom of my braid that I chopped off because it wasn't the right kind of size. We can add on the actual bit at the bottom that goes in the lock. For some reason I always end up adding it onto the right. I'm not quite sure why. You can do a double sort of a bolt, triple sort of a bolt, just a little bit of extra challah dough. Add on the bottom of your design. Second, so that you've got the part that would actually go into the lock itself. And especially this bottom part, feel free to add some silver foil in between the little bits that go in the lock when you're doing the bake. You don't join together because you won't be able to see the individual pieces of the food. That we'll actually see the key section. So if I just turn mine around at the moment, you can see what we're doing. I've got this very elaborate design in the top of the key, and if I can reach it up without it dropping down, I've also doing the bottom part there. I've added 3 little pieces of challah dough on the bottom to the side, so that you can see the bottom piece that's going to go into the lock. And then before I bake it, I will put some silver foil in between each bit of the bottom part so that it doesn't all blend together in the oven. So just while you're finishing off your designs, you're adding your swirls and your curls of challah dough, you're adding the bottom part of the lock. Let's talk a couple of other things important about Shlissel challah. So when you have finished your design, you're going to cover it over with a clean tea towel, some cling film, a beeswax wrap if you can for the environment. Just cover it over again, and you're going to let it rise for the second time. The second rise does not have to be as long as the first rise, especially if you've been supplied challah dough from somewhere else. That probably doesn't need to rise very much at all, but we're going to let it have its second rise in half an hour, something like that, so it has to puff up when it's in the position that you have shaped it into. Then you're going to egg wash your challah dough. Now let's chat egg wash as well. So egg wash gives you all number of choices. You can have just the egg white, and that will leave your challah dough very light in colour, but matte in texture. You can use egg yolk, and that will make the colour very, very dark, but very shiny. Or use a mixture of the egg white and the egg yolk, and that makes it a sort of in-between colour with a little bit of gloss and a little bit of matte. There's some other things you can do to the egg wash. You can add some drops of food colouring or natural colorants into the egg wash if you fancy. If you're doing this with the family or the kids and you want a little bit fun, you can put some colour into the egg wash itself to make it a little bit more snazzy and colourful. You can also add flavour into the egg wash. If you want it to be a really lovely savoury colour, you can put a little bit of pink sea salt or rock salt into the actual egg wash, and that finishes off the texture with a little bit of taste. You can even, if you like spices, you could add a bit of za'atar or something into the actual egg wash, just to finish off the flavor when you're getting your challah. If you don't want an actual za'atar baked into the challah, but you just want a little taste, that can be really lovely. Let's talk toppings as well. Once you've egg washed your challah, but before you bake it, you can add on to the design of your Shlissel challah by adding different toppings in an interesting design. The one thing to do is different colored seeds. So seeds are gorgeous as an accessory and a topping, but they're also great for design because they're different colors. So you can use white sesame seeds, black poppy seeds, green pumpkin seeds, and grayish sort of sunflower seeds. And what you can do is you can use the seeds as a decoration to add onto a design. So you can do a sort of stripy zebra design in white sesame seeds and poppy seeds, just strips on top of your thistle. Accessory, you can do swirls and beads just to give a really pretty texture and finish to your Shlissel challah designs. And again, there's an example on Instagram of what that looks like when you use seeds of different colors for texture, and that can be really pretty. Another thing you can use if you want something a little bit brighter in color is you can use things like crushed strawberries or raspberries, freeze-dried strawberries, freeze-dried raspberries, and you can use the powder, so you sort of pulverize them up with a pestle and mortar, and then you can use the bright pink of the strawberry powder, the raspberry powder, and use that to make pretty textures as well. You can also use dried fruit to make a texture, although note that will melt a little bit more in the oven, but you could use little chopped hot apricots for orange, cranberries, dried little prunes, dried fruit, just to give a really pretty texture. So for your Shlissel challah, which is all about the design, you've got the pretty basic design that we've made here using the long thin braids. You can elevate that even further by using different toppings and design the toppings. They don't have to just be sprinkled on all of the top. You can actually make strips and waves and swirls using toppings. If you're doing it with children, you can use sprinkles as well. You can use sprinkles and make them a little bit kind of art-form creative, and you put them onto your challah, just to really make this a celebration for your table. And although we won't be able to necessarily share this with the people that we usually would, it's a very fun idea for everybody. At least you can make it something pretty for your own home, for your own table. So I hope this has given you some inspiration about how to use challah in a slightly different way, how to shape it in a slightly different way than you usually would, and to make your very own Shlissel shaped challah. And I love seeing everybody's designs. So please do, if you're posting your designs to social media, please tag Kai, because they love to see your designs, and please tag me at Allegra Benita. I will certainly share all your designs that you tag me in on my stories. It will be a really great pleasure to have a big Shlissel challah celebration going on social media as well. If you have any other questions for me about the Shlissel or anything else challah related, you can pop them in the chat, and I'm very happy to take them. And otherwise, I hope everybody has a really Shabbat Shalom and a really great year. Please God, with Manasseh and good health that we really do need in a hard year for everybody. And I've got a question that's just come up now. How long is the second proof and what temperature does it go in? So the second proof should be a little bit shorter than the first proof. I would say about half an hour, 40 minutes maximum. Especially with something as delicate as this, you don't want it to puff up too much and then end up joining together. The temperature is 180 degrees C, a fan, just a normal fan oven that distributes the temperature evenly. And this Shlissel challah would go in, usually my big challahs go in for half an hour, but this really only would need 20 minutes because it's very thin and very delicate. So have a look at your challah, think how many strips you put together. If like me, you've done it very delicate, it's a very sort of delicate design without too many strips, then you don't need it to go in for very long. It should only go in for maybe 20 minutes. And keep an eye, you might want to cover it with foil after about 15 for the last 5 minutes to make sure it doesn't get brown and too crispy. Here we go. Louise, how is yours doing? I'd love to see yours. How did you find it?
Okay, this is a moment of truth. I'm so embarrassed to show it. I'm so embarrassed. It's such an.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, you know what it is. I didn't follow just the thinness. I didn't get the thinness exactly how thin it should be. So I improvised, and it's a bit like life. sometimes you're going down on a track and you think you know what you're doing and you think you're getting it all right, and it doesn't actually work out exactly as you thought. So improvisation is, I think, was the name of the game for me, certainly today. And maybe mine's a bit more chunky, a bit more substantial, but thank you, Allegra, for everything that you did, for your time. Now I know what to do next time. I will definitely do it, and I'm sure my granddaughters, I know my girls have tuned in from New York and Montreal, and they're going to watch, so I'm going to ask how they got on. And really, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone. And just bring it back to how it all started at Chai. We started doing the Shlissel a few years ago, as I said. The building is filled with the most incredible smell of Challah. And of course, we give it to our clients. And we've actually also started doing it on the week before Rosh Chodesh, before the new month. And it's something that all the team, all the girls love doing, and they've all become very proficient in making challah. And now we have a new skill, is how to make Shlissel challah correctly. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining. And we're really hoping that Chai will be open slowly. We're eagerly waiting the day when we can welcome all our clients back into the building. Our team have kept going, doing things through Zoom, through Skype, through these mediums. But we just can't wait to see everyone back at Chai in the right time. So thank you, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, and enjoy the Challah. And please, God should bring mazel and bracha and all good things to us all. Thank you, everyone. Bye.